Welcome
One.
back to the SCIF.
Yeah,
Thank you.
baby.
Thank you for joining us again. And who knows what's going to happen tonight? Tonight we're going to talk about there is a female that is expected to graduate the Q course. And just an alert ahead of time, we're going to be honest about everything we talk about here. There's no sugarcoating anything. Please, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them. Ridiculous questions are cool. We're going to talk about some other stuff too coming up. The ammo situation right now. Some of the stuff going on out on the West Coast with that chop, Chaz, whatever the hell they're calling it right now. And some of the stuff that is going on, in my opinion, and I think it's a pretty good one, on what the left is trying to do before the election. So we're going to start off with this whole Green Beret nonsense, and I have to tell you, I don't know why I take it so personal.
Back up, Matt, to the beginning where the guys were getting. Those guys got fired because that's going to be like the preliminary set. That's going to be setting the stage for this whole thing.
Okay, we'll set the stage that way. Back in 2018, actually prior to that, as soon as they announced women in combat roles and they said you're going to have female Green Berets, female Navy SEALs, female Rangers, they put together a list. And I know in the Army they were doing it for two things. They were putting together a list of candidates that were women that they thought may have a chance of passing Ranger School, and they were also putting together candidates that could go to pre-selection and see where it was going. They put together, I believe at the time, 45 women for pre-selection. Not one of them made it through pre-selection. So a couple of years ago, we had a general, his name is General Sontag, who was the general of the schoolhouse is what they call it, but it's technically SWIC. Correct me if I say anything wrong here, Chris, but it's technically SWIC. And what they had done is they had said, oh, okay, we're going to get women jammed through this. So what they did is they started playing with the Q course, and they also started playing with selection. And in selection, the way it was, because there was this standard that they put through, that they had this unisex standard. So there wouldn't be a men's standard and there wouldn't be a female standard. And they sold this to the public as they were going to have one standard for PT. And they based it off of the bare minimum on the men's side, as far as I can see. And what they didn't tell people is nobody made it into SF that just met a bare standard. Okay, you had to be up in the top percentile or maxing these tests to be even, and that's only one portion of the PT test, one small portion. But when you went to selection, the PT test, if you failed it, you were gone immediately, most likely never to return. You fail a PT test, you were never to return. Okay, you quit any section of the Q course or any of selection, never to return. Right? Well, what they ended up doing is they got a woman to go through selection. In the first week, she quit. Okay, from what I understand, she didn't pass the PT test. Things were miserable, and she quit. So they plussed her up, and they brought her back through. Okay, selection. And when they went through selection, the basic deal with selection was the first week you were there, roughly, you went through a series of events. And the series of events, your PT test, you'd had a ruck, a bunch of stuff that went on there just to basically get a general feel for your physical condition and what was going to be expected of you. There were timed events that you had to pass. And then they moved into the STAR course, which has been a staple of the Q course for a long, long time. And what the STAR course is you are assigned certain points. Okay, it runs for 3 days. It did run for 3 days, and you had to get either 4 points in one night, or you had to amass a total of 8 points over the course of the 3 days. If you didn't get those points, there was, if you had 7 points or something, there was an apparatus in there that they would allow you to continue. And if you were a standout through the rest of selection, you may have an opportunity to pass. Usually you would. You'd be, even if you made it all the way through it, a 21-day non-select. But what they did is you had to really do well in the STAR course, because you were taught basic land navigation. You had a topo map that you had to be able to read. You had to know terrain association. You had to be able to use a lensatic compass and a protractor. And some of your movements, they do this in an area called the northern. It's an area that is all jungle. Put it this way: very difficult terrain, very overgrown terrain, hilly terrain. And you can get lost in this terrain very, very easy if you're not good at what you're doing. Now, running through this area where you do the STAR course, they had a series of roads, okay, dirt roads that obviously they would use to navigate to get people there, but you're not allowed to run those roads. So you would be given your points. You'd have to figure out where those points were, and you would then plot everything out, and you'd move out to try to meet the time hack. And some of these movements could be 30 clicks, which is a long way through rough terrain. And they're famous for their draws up there, down there in North Carolina. And these draws get so thick and overgrown, and there's poisonous snakes, and there's wild pigs, and you name it, it's out there. Okay, poisonous spiders. There's all sorts of stuff. But if you were to run one of these roads to try to get around these draws or anything along those, you use the roads, it was called a roadkill. And if you got a roadkill, it was known as an honor violation. And if you had that honor violation, you were booted immediately, never to return because you cheated. Okay? So fast forward, this woman, they got her plussed up. She got into the STAR course. She didn't get all of her points, and I'm going to tell you in a second, because Chris brought this back, and how do we know this, and how are we going to set it up? She didn't get all her points, and she was caught not once, but twice running the road. So she was a roadkill twice. They didn't get rid of her. She failed her PT test, apparently. We don't have the whole story, okay? So some of this stuff is hearsay, and some of it has been put out there. So she didn't get that. Apparently she got peered and basically did not have a good time during team week. Team week is the roughest portion of the Q course, of selection. And it is absolutely miserable. For those of you out there that don't understand, I'm using two terms: selection and the Q course. Selection is the process to determine if you are going to be granted access into the Q course. And the Q course has several stages through it. They call phases. Okay? Selection is just selection. It was 3 weeks. They brought it down to 2 at one point. Then they brought it back to 3 weeks. So anyways, apparently she had a rough time in team week. And she also got peered. So apparently she was a 21-day non-select, even though she should have never gotten to this point. And some of the brass came in and said, nope, she's a go. Okay? Now, how do we know this? How do we know all of this? We know all of this because two of the instructors, once you spend time on a team, you get sent back to the schoolhouse to be an instructor for 2 years. That's actually where Chris and I met. And they made all of the instructors out there sign non-disclosure agreements. Okay? They did the same thing in Ranger School when they did that, but we're focusing on Special Forces here. And two of these instructors saw this nonsense that was going down. Okay? So in subsequent classes, this General Sontag removed the STAR course as a mandatory aspect of the Q course, or of selection. And if you failed a PT test, you got multiple chances to try again. If you quit, not only did you get the opportunity to come back, but they would start requesting Do you want to come back to selection? Right? And a lot of this, they said, was a result is they couldn't get people to go through selection. The newer generation didn't want to put themselves out there like that. This is what their excuse was, and they need people desperately, right? They're not getting enough people to sign up to go to selection. So
Here's
two of the instructors saw what was going on, and they put a letter out to the public because it was all being brushed under the rug. Because the Army Command wanted to really show how woke they were, and they were going to get women through special operations, right? And the letter went viral. This General Sontag spent all resources that he possibly could come up with, and roughly the better part of a year and a half to try to track down who these two guys were that let the cat out of the bag, that completely contradicted the story that the brass was putting out. And not only did he destroy their lives, he took their tabs. They were booted out of the Army. I believe they were brought up on charges. Well, in the course of all of this, General Sontag was brought up on charges. 6 charges to be direct on this. Eventually, he was acquitted on all charges with the exception of one, but there was no punishment for him. He was allowed to retire. He was forced out, but he was allowed to retire, being convicted one of the 6 charges against him. So long story short, a story came out that this woman had made it through the whole Q course about a year ago, and she just had Robin Sage to go. And now everybody who had ever been through the Q course started scratching their heads. And there's like, how women definitely have a place in the military, okay? But to do that job, only a small percentage of men can get through that. Small percentage. Your rucks in phase 2 are never under 150 pounds, ever. Okay? And at some stages during phase 2, your rucks are in excess. Chris, tell me if I'm exaggerating, okay? Are in excess of 300 pounds. Okay? This breaks off most men. And the men it doesn't break off, it catches up to them later on in life. Ask me how I know. Ask Chris how he knows. Okay? And Chris and I are both 220 pounds, 6'1", plus weight. We're between 220, 230 pounds. Okay? And we're just scratching our heads saying, what woman alive can do that without being broken? And there's just, we have no idea what happened here. But what I can surmise after seeing what came out and all of the hullabaloo that went on about this, that they were doing a lot of things that were different. In the Q course, you had a section for language because you had to pass language. You had to get a 1+1 in the DLPT. So with reading, writing, speaking, you got between 4 and 6 months of training. Okay? And they took language out of the Q course and put it into group. If you failed language, and this was towards the end of the Q course, you were booted, never to return. So we're wondering what in the hell has happened that officers within the command would completely destroy the reputation of special forces. Okay, and I know there was a story a few years ago where this admiral was jumping up and down saying there will be female Navy SEALs. They're next. And believe me, they're working in the Navy right now figuring out a way to modify buds and everything else to get a woman through. Because that's what they did here in the Q course. And it makes Chris and I'm speaking for Chris here, but I know Chris very, very well, and we have talked about this. We are so depressed about this because it has nothing to do with women. It has nothing. Women deserve a place in the military, and they can serve in the military in an excellent capacity. But you can't destroy the best military in the world to be woke and politically correct, because not only have the standards been lowered so much that women can get in, but men who had no business being in are going to be getting in. And this is an absolute disgrace to anybody who's ever worn the Green Beret, served overseas in special forces, okay? Because this was the pinnacle achievement of my life, being able to get through the Q course, to be selected, to get through the Q course, to become a Green Beret after 2 years of misery, psychological misery, physical misery, right? 2 years. It is a misery. I take that back. It was a miserable course to get through, okay? And the reason what made special operators stand out wasn't because they're supermen. It was because they had the ability to endure, okay? They've just cut the heart out of Special Forces and Ranger Battalion prior to this, okay, for what they have done here. And this is, we thought we won an election to stop this nonsense. This is why I was never a fan of General Mattis and any of these generals that were brought out, you know, that showed themselves this last month, okay? He had an opportunity to stop this, okay? And the same thing is going on in MARSOC, right? The same thing is going on. Believe me, it's going on in the Navy. They've already destroyed the Rangers. I don't know much about the Air Force Special Operations Unit, but I promise you they're doing the same things. And this is not a badge of honor, okay, to allow this to happen. But apparently she has just graduated, Robin Sage, and she is going to be given the Green Beret in July. And I am dumbfounded as to what they've done. I don't know. I'm sure other instructors are afraid to let the cat out of the bag because they've all signed non-disclosure agreements and they saw what happened when it was being destroyed before. But I am beside myself, and I'm not just saying this. It is not a job a woman can do. And Chris and I were talking before. It would be like forcing a woman to become a wide receiver or a tight end in the NFL. One hit and she is destroyed, okay? When I'm fully kitted up, I weigh over 300 pounds. Chris weighs over 300 pounds. So if we go into the door and we're the first down, okay, are we going to rely on our teammates now to throw us, our 300 pounds, on top of whatever kit that they have on and to get us off of that objective? How is a woman going to do that? She can't. What if there's somebody there, she comes through the door and grabs her? Now the whole team has to go and deal with her issue. And this is insane. It is like taking a woman and putting her in the MMA to fight Conor McGregor, right? It is stupid, and we're doing this. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of outrage out there. There's like, whoa, if they, because people don't understand what's involved. They don't understand. They don't understand the weight involved, the physical limitations of the human body, and what you're pushed to. They don't understand that when you reduce that, you have people now on the teams that don't belong on those teams, and you're only as strong as your weakest link. And what happens to the weakest link on the team, Chris? What happens to him?
Usually falls behind.
And that's it. And they get booted.
Yeah. You know, these are all excellent points. And it made me sit here listening to you here in the last few minutes. It made me think of something that's really kind of taken hold in our society over the past 12 months. And really extended about a year and a half, with all the transgender things in these colleges and men saying they're women and competing at the collegiate level, or they're in transition or whatever. So here's the thing. They're all over this past 18 months, what we have found in society, let's separate from the military, but let's talk about at the collegiate level, even at high school. The females now are coming forward and saying, hey, listen, this is not a female competing. It's a dude competing with females. Okay.
Well, Chris, who was that in that same vein? Who was the WW or the MMA where they had the transgender that was fighting in the women's class and then he crushed the woman's skull?
I don't know about that. I didn't know that I didn't know that happened, Matt.
Yes, it did.
What I'm trying to say is when you take a look at this, now the female species is fighting back saying, look, we can't compete with these dudes and it's not fair. Okay, so we put the shoe on the other foot there for a minute. Now, if you think about that in comparison to this, it's sort of like the same thing, but we're not saying that it can be done. We're saying that there has been a conspiracy here that's been uncovered. Okay. People, guys like Matt and I, that have sacrificed almost everything in their life to support this nation, has been utterly destroyed by some other dude that is complacent with his values. That's what it is. And all these, and I'm talking about these officers. And you know what? Here's another problem, Matt. These sergeant majors out there, they're just as bad.
Yeah,
they're just as bad.
They get the lobotomy and become the general's little henchmen.
Yeah,
we can name names on here, so we're not going to.
Two good sergeant majors I had my entire career. Two out of many, and they sit back and they let these officers do this garbage.
What happened to one of those good sergeant majors?
Oh, they canned him quick.
Yeah, a guy with the silver star.
Yeah,
who actually looked out for his dudes. We don't want to name names here, but yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Someday he might listen to this, and you know who you are. You know who we're talking about. Hey, thanks a lot, Sergeant Major, for looking out for us. That's just the way it was, and you did a great job at it. And he was one of the two I was talking about.
He was the man.
Yeah. So we go back and we look at, and this was a problem, historical problem we dealt with from the beginning of letting officers. We're in the beginning. Okay, when we look back at the very, very beginning of Special Forces, all right, they had their place, but now they've just evolved to this section where it's not needed. And now they get in there and they think they got a little bit of power and they can make decisions, but they lost their values. They got complacent, and none of the sergeant majors said, hey, pulled them aside and doing the right non-commissioned officer thing, going, hey, you need to rethink this because we got standards that we need to uphold. Now,
I'm going to give some of the people a little bit of backstory here so they understand what you're talking about. An officer in Special Forces, it has one job on the team. He's not in charge. Special Forces has traditionally been run by enlisted. Okay, so an officer can't even try out for SF until he is captain promotable. So he's already spent at least at a bare minimum of 5 years in the regular Army thinking straight-laced regular Army, which is 180 degrees different from being in special operations. So once he gets into special operations, he's the least experienced guy on the team. He can only spend 18 months to 2 years on a team, and then he's taken from the team and he goes to a staff position. And then from that staff position, he goes to a company commander, okay? And then maybe a battalion commander, and if he's lucky, he becomes a group commander. Special Forces used to always be a dead end for officers, not anymore. So the only officers that you used to get into Special Forces were guys that wanted to kick ass. But now, if you can get yourself into Special Forces, you're only going to have to spend 18 to 2 months to 2 years on a team. And then you get to go and start making all of these decisions and show how, you're going to represent what your bosses want you to represent and what a good little soldier you are, right? So a lot of these guys are complete turds. And if they get to a team and there's struggles, the team sergeant usually squashes that team or the team leader, the officer. Okay, because a lot of them don't understand how special operations works. They don't know how to think outside the box. They're 100% conventional. The problem that we've had is that these guys get into a command position and now they start making decisions for Special Forces, and they're the least experienced and prepared to make those decisions. And that is what is tearing the heart and the soul out of Special Forces. And I'm sure it's that way across the branches, because I'm sure that's the same way the Navy, it's happening in the Navy. I know it's going on in the Marines. And generally, the rest of the army, big army, hates special forces because they get money, they get all of these missions. So big army hates special forces. Big Marines hate MARSOC, right? Now, the Navy doesn't really have any other combat arms, so the SEALs are still held up on a pedestal. But everybody's combat arms in the Marines and in the Army, and they look at the special operations, and they're like, we can do anything those guys can do.
Yeah.
And that's why you have some of that. So these generals, or these commanders that go through special forces, want to become a general now. Before it was a dead end. A group commander is a colonel, right? And that was as high as you could ever hope for. But if you wanted to kick ass, that's where you went. Well, now if you become a group commander, you're guaranteed you're going to be a general, just about guaranteed. Okay? So in order to get your stars, you have to make big army nice and happy. And that is where everything has all gone to hell. So you said there's a simple answer. Well, that simple answer would be the most experienced guys go from green to gold. Most SF dudes have college degrees. They can all be officers, most of them, okay? Not that that should be a requirement. But wouldn't you want the most experienced guys on the team to be your officers leading, making decisions that's going to affect all of special forces? Well, yeah, you would. But guess what? Officers made it so you have to go through the whole Q course all over again. If you want to be a team sergeant and become an officer, you're going to have to go through the whole Q course starting at phase 2 all the way through again, which is complete. Who's going to do that? Phase 2, the Q course used to be 2 years long. They've condensed it now, so it's a year long, right? Because they've pulled little things out of it that were hard. And so now you have it. So it's a protected class. There's a few guys that go and do that, but very, very few are going to be experienced SF guys that have spent years on a team, working their way up to team sergeant, and then going through the whole Q course again when you're the most experienced guy there. It's stupid. But this is the way officers protect themselves, and this is how they're able to destroy special forces from within, which is what they're doing.
And there's some training issues in there too. I remember one of the things I don't want to mention it on here, some of the training stuff that I did when I went through, and they have since taken that out because I've asked some of the guys that came through there and they're like, no, we didn't do that. So it's fundamentally kind of changing a little bit. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why that's not because of technology or things like that. But the fundamentals in SF special operations across the board has always been keeping it simple and master of the simple skills. And that goes with shooting. It goes with just packing your ruck properly to so you can walk miles and miles and miles on end. Just little things like that matter.
Or taking things that other people make complicated and making them simple. That's what it's all about. And there's an art to that.
Yep. And one of those things that, wow, this kind of remind me of selection. And for who's listening out there, one of the things that we did, well, I don't know if Matt did this, but because it was always changing, which was one of the things about SF, they're keeping it fluid and keeping it moving and keeping it versatile all the time. You're always being tested. But one of the things I did was we pushed a Jeep, 7 or 8, or I don't. We just
we did the same. We did the same thing.
We just kept pushing the Jeep, and he's like,
3 wheels.
Yeah, it's like, hey, don't stop until I tell you. So go that way and don't stop. So that's what Matt was talking about earlier with the endurance. You just you did it and you didn't question it. So, and in the end, that rooted out the weak people. And
all with an 80-pound ruck. You always had an 80-pound ruck in selection and all of that. The rucks just got heavier as you went on. So go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
And I know because you probably started with over 300 people, and Okay, and only 70 were standing there at the end, or whatever
Mm-hmm.
number it was. Because here's the deal: it's not the female body or the male body. It's just weakness. You got to reach deep down and find the intestinal fortitude, and you gut it out. You just embrace everything that sucks about it, and you put it out of your mind, and you keep going. And
But the question
plenty of
is here,
men,
why would
yeah,
they if they really wanted it to be, why would they change the standards? If they really,
exactly,
so okay,
exactly.
let women come in and
That's
try, but do not change the standard. You cannot change the standard. You
you
cannot
can't.
lighten the rucks. You cannot have other people take over and carry stuff for them. You cannot give them any portion of grace when they cheat and run the roads and get caught running the roads twice. So that says two things. Not only did they run the roads twice, but they got caught on top of that.
Yeah,
So that sounds like the basis of a good operator right there.
yeah,
It's just
yeah.
it's just every little thing. And so now and then they're removing language from it. I mean, what have we done? What have we done? We've destroyed it. Just make it an infantry unit and be done with it. I mean, it's believe me, the Army would wants this. They want it to be an infantry unit and done and over. They don't need
Yeah.
special forces. They don't need special operations. They think they can do all of it, which they cannot. They cannot. And here's another thing that I want to bring up because maybe people aren't aware. Special Forces, Green Beret, U.S. Army Special Forces have taken by far more casualties than any other special operation unit out there. They've caught more bad guys. They've run more missions. They're the most combat experienced unit on the face of the United States military. Okay? And they're destroying it. They are destroying it. And it's an absolute
It's a disgrace.
it's really affecting me because and other Green Berets as well because you go through like it's embarrassing now that they've taken that thing that you were so proud of, that you worked so hard for, that you were not going to fail no matter what, and they've destroyed it. And not just us, everybody, the MACV SOG guys from Vietnam, you know, that's where the halo jump was invented. Could you imagine being the first guy to do that? I was an SF dude, right? You just see this going back to the OSS in World War II. You know, seeing how all of this developed, they have dishonored everybody, and those weak generals, which are just rampant through the military right now. The weak ass generals are destroying and tearing the heart out of U.S. military. Obama fired something like 500 plus flag ranking officers. These were the ass kickers. They're gone. Anybody that was left, that's why you're getting the General Kellys and the Mad Dog Mattises and all of these guys they were turds. These guys were turds. They were left over. Yes, there you go. And that's the 5th
Hey,
group flash from Vietnam right there, which is now their flash again.
everybody out there, this is if you want to know how this all started. Okay, grab this book right here and read this book, and you'll know exactly what Matt and I are talking about. Me and Matt and we believe in the old school, and I want to thank those guys for doing what they did here, because these guys here in this book, they stood up to them officers out there and they said, no, we're not doing that. We're doing it our way because this is the way that it should be done. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they bucked the system so much. Okay. And they almost got in trouble, but they did it and they made it work. And
John F. Kennedy came to their rescue, actually. They were telling command to go and stuff it. And John F. Kennedy came and said, command, you stuff it. And that's
and then we were born. That's just the way it was. And here's the thing. When you tell one of us no, that's really not going to work out for you too well. And you know, and I tell this, hey, and this can go from the punks out there right now trying to ruin this great nation that Matt and I fought for. Okay, you're not going to go much further than our when you step on our property. That's the way it is. And you know what? There's some guys, you think that you're going to get away with that stuff right now. And I can tell you, there's some guys out there starting to huddle up. We ain't going to take much more. And you don't want to back us into a corner. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chris and I are extremely upset about this. And if it's not showing right now, it's an emotional thing for us, just because this was such a big part of our lives, and a big part of our lives that we were proud of, and that very few people actually made it to. So it was an accomplishment. And when you see those standards destroyed for the sake of political correctness, it's not. I have nothing against women in the military. Chris has nothing against women in the military. Women are as smart as men. Women can do some things better than men. Men do some things better than women. A lot of that is physical. Okay. To be a Green Beret, it takes two things. It takes a brain, and it takes the physicality to get the job done. And those standards were such that so few people, so few men could make, that when you destroy those standards, you've destroyed the unit. And that's what they are trying to do. I'm just hoping sanity prevails here, but I am very, very, very concerned about the direction we are going in. You just see we've got a commander-in-chief that's a fighter. We've got a Republican Party that is impotent, that is running scared. That most of the guys in the Republican Party, not all of them, not the Rand Pauls, not the Ted Cruzes or those guys, but most are not the Jim Jordans, but the rest of them were born scared, as far as I'm concerned. They don't know how to stand up for anything. Right now, they want to capitulate. Trump has said he's not going to allow them to change the name. He's going to veto it. Anything that comes through that's going to rename Fort Bragg, right? Well, don't worry, because the Republicans in the Senate are all about changing the name to Fort Bragg. So they're going to capitulate now, and 10 minutes later, the left's going to want something else. So these people have no idea how to fight. There's a handful that do, but they're outnumbered. These guys are a disgrace. And if the Republicans lose, it's not because of Trump. It's because of these weenies out there. People need to start writing their Republican congressmen and their senators. There was a guy from Indiana, one of the senators from Indiana, Republican. He has basically taken up the platform of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. That's what he's taken. It's a Marxist shadow organization. It's not about anything that they claim to be about. It's about tearing our country down so we can start out with a new Marxist form of government. It is an absolute disaster. They're going to use race. They'll use the environment. They'll use anything they can. Okay? Kids have been indoctrinated because of the teachers union and everything that's gone on over the last 2 generations. So the military has not been left out of this, and the military is right in the middle of it. And anybody that's out there that claims that, oh, I'm in the middle, I'm all for this, they're full of shit. Okay? They haven't been in one of these units, and if they are, they were a backbencher in one of these units and just happened to get through. A turd would get through every once in a while. But it's an absolute disgrace, and it's not going to be good for the women. Chris and I are broken from our time in special forces. Okay? We're 6'1", 230-pound dudes. Okay? What is a woman's body going to go through? It just dumbfounds me. Who thinks that this is a good idea? And then everybody says, well, they've been in the Israeli Defense Force. They're not in their top-tier special operations units. They may be in their line combat units. They're not in their top-tier special operations unit. This is a disgrace. The Obama administration started. This should have been stopped. It wasn't stopped. Mattis, this should have been one of the first things that he stopped. He was a failure. That guy was an absolute failure. We need to get some people who know what the hell they're doing and that have the stones to be able to lead. That's what I think half of the American country is waiting for.
Yep, I agree. And it came out last night on the news that the newly elected one from North Carolina and I think Colorado. I don't know. He's an ex NFL player.
In Utah, he won his primary. That's Burgess Meredith, or the guy from the Raiders. Real good dude. Real good guy.
They're talking about going in there They were talking last night. They were interviewing. They're talking about going into D.C. and kicking them dudes out. You know what? Good. Get them out. They ain't done nothing but cause problems.
We need to get him elected. We need in Utah. And I want to say Burgess. No, I don't know. My brain is not working right now. But he played on the Raiders, was on the Super Bowl winning 1980 team. This guy is an intellect. He's smart as hell. We have a rich history of appeasement working worldwide. That's absolutely correct. Appeasement because people are afraid to fight. Give not 1 inch. Absolutely. We've got a president who's like that. But we don't have enough Republicans with stones. We've got the guy from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, who's talking about getting rid of Columbus Day and doing Juneteenth as its replacement. So now we got to run away from Columbus Day because a bunch of people on the left say we have to. We have to forget our whole history. This country fought a civil war. This isn't what it's about, people. These organizations are not about what they claim to be about. These environmental organizations don't give a shit about the environment. These people, the people behind these organizations like Black Lives Matter, they don't give a shit about the people. These people, these are Marxist organizations. These are Marxist organizations designed to use race to drive a wedge between all of us, right? Designed to use the environment to drive a wedge between all of us, to destroy our way of life here, to convince people that everybody here is bad. We have a history of racism. This is not a racist country. We talk about this every night. Okay? It's not. We've had not perfect. We've gone through some bullshit. We had a civil war. We've had hundreds of thousands of people killed in the Civil War. Lincoln freed the slaves. Now they're trying to pull statues of Lincoln over. Are you kidding? Lincoln was assassinated for freeing the slaves.
Hey,
now they're trying
I got a little secret for the Democrats out there, man. I got a little secret. Hey, if you think that Civil War is going to go your way again, that's funny because that is really what happened the first time, right? Do you think that's really going to work?
Well, you bring up a good point.
No.
You bring up a good point. The Democrats are the same people. They are the same people. Man. They're the same people who came up with the KKK. They're the same people who eulogized Robert Byrd. They're the same people. They just know how to use divisive issues to drive a wedge through this country, and do not be fooled by these people. And half of these damn Republicans are useless as well because they've got no stones, they're stupid, or they're part of the cabal as far as I'm concerned. There's a bunch of good ones. We've named a few. The president is kicking ass, but he's up there by himself for the large part. He's by himself. We need to get him some support. I watched this morning on Fox News, Dana Perino come on, and Mitch McConnell, oh, I hope the president doesn't veto the defense bill because we're just going to rename Fort Bragg and Fort Benning. And Dana Perino's like, I don't know what the big deal is about it, basically. I'm paraphrasing, okay? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I can't stand her anyways. She's abhorrent, okay? These rhino Republicans are abhorrent as far as I'm concerned. I don't know who makes me more sick, these mealy-mouthed, weak-kneed rhino Republicans or the hardcore left like Schumer and Pelosi or any of them. They're really all at the same because they're working on the same thing. None of them have a backbone, right? Burgess Owens. Thank you. Burgess Owens kicks ass in Utah. Get this guy elected. He won his primary. Let's get him elected. They had Mia Love out there who turned out to be a never Trumper, and what happened to her? She was voted out. And now they've got, in a highly Republican district out there, they've got a guy who calls himself a blue dog Democrat. He is not. He's not a blue dog. Get Burgess Owens elected. This guy, we need him in the House. So, anyways, Chris and I are upset about this. We wanted to kind of shed a little bit of light. I know sounds like a little bit of ranting here on what we're talking about, but we feel passionate about this, and we want you to know where we're coming from out there. And please ask us questions. You can do it offline. Please ask us questions on this because the public has no idea what is required to get into these positions and what needed to be done to get their they're Trojan horses in to destroy these units and just destroy the military, not just the unit. They're trying to destroy the military as a whole. So it's something that's close and dear to us. We want to move on here a little bit because I don't know if our blood pressure can handle this whole thing. It's going to be announced here in a few days, and of course, it's going to be plastered all over the media. It's like a dagger through our hearts. 300 million guns and 1 trillion rounds of ammo owned by the American people. The only military guys supporting the left use a spatula as their weapon. Fighters are concerned. We like to think this, but here's one of the things. I had mentioned the Dan Bongino report before, but he had a really good show about a week ago, and he was outlining what he believes, and it is a consensus of what is going to happen. If we lose the election and we lose the Senate, okay, and we lose the presidency, what they're going to do, and I agree with this, they're going to go to a 15-person Supreme Court. They're going to rescind the filibuster, which they brought to power in the first place, the Democrats. So the minority party has no say in anything whatsoever. They're going to plus up federal agencies like they were doing under the Obama administration with their people. They're going to be well-stocked, well-armed, tons of ammo. Every one of them is going to have their own tactical units. And these federal agencies are going to be used against the people who don't go along with them, Americans that don't go along with them, because the Obama turned everything inside and looked at as Americans as the enemy, right? Americans that didn't agree with them. This is what they're going to do. They're going to nationalize healthcare, and they're going to go after the Second Amendment. They're going to start with those scary AR-15s, and it's going to go downhill from there. There'll be a magazine ban, all sorts of things, okay? They are going to eviscerate this country. China will pass us economically and militarily. If we don't get our act together right now, they're going to do that. And they are going to start the destruction and the decline of the greatest country in the world. And that's what will start. And I am not being melodramatic with that.
Hey, Matt, I got another question on another forum here asking about our thoughts on the St. Louis couple. And
great question.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
It's so funny when you see how the fake news portrayed this. They said they didn't break down any gate. Well, they took pictures of the gate that they broke down. They were saying they were just going by as peaceful protesters. No, they threatened the couple. The couple desperately tried to get help. They tried to get security firms to help them. Nobody was going to help them. Okay? You've got a Republican governor of that state who is one of these people that I was just talking about. He is useless. He could get state troopers up there. I was watching a little bit of Tucker tonight, and they were talking about what this pathetic Republican governor, who used to be a sheriff, is doing to help these people. These people were there by themselves, and thank God they went out there. They looked a little goofy because obviously they don't have a lot of firearms training. I could tell by watching them, but they stood up, and they had more bravery than most of these people had ever thought of. Okay, a dude and his wife out there protecting their property, and they stayed in the inner city because they wanted to invest in this property and stay there. Everybody else and most of the people that lived in that neighborhood have moved out to the suburbs. Now that brings us on to another subject. The reason why they're trying to defund the police in the major cities is because the Democrats have controlled the cities for years. They've turned the cities into cesspools. So what they're going to do is make the cities unlivable now and push all of that into the suburbs. They're coming for you in the suburbs. A lot of these morons out there that don't understand what is going on, you better start getting it here quick, because they win this November, they are coming for you. Who are the systemic racists? They're you in the that's who they're talking about, morons. In the suburbs, they're talking about you. They are coming for you. If you vote Democrat for these people, because that party is not the Democrat Party from 30 years ago. We had two distinct parties that were both patriotic parties 30 years ago. Not anymore. That is the Marxist Party today. And they are coming for you. They're going to tear this country down. They're going to tear everything about this country's founding and everything else. And you need to wake up out there if you are on the fence on who you're going to vote for. They need to take some classes from Penerjek. Index that finger. Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
They definitely need to take some classes. Those people, as far as I'm concerned, are patriots, and I don't think they're. I think they're more liberal-minded people to begin with. But you know what? They stood up when it was called for, and they protected their property. And now that prosecutor there, who's a radical in St. Louis, is going to bring them up on charges. I tell you what, there should be a legal defense fund for these people, and then they should go after. If she brings them up on charges, they need to go after her. But they've already been doxxed. All their information has been put out there. They're taking unending harassment. Nobody is helping these people. The only option for these people that would have satisfied everybody is to allow the mob to take their house. They threatened to kill their dog. They threatened to destroy their home. They threatened to come after them if they didn't leave.
This is
right. And this is what in America we're supposed to just let people destroy. This is where I'm just having such an issue, because these riots, allowing people to destroy people's buses, allowing people to destroy what this country is. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
This is the same thing they did with that when the police pulled that guy out in Wendy's. It's the same media coverage happened. They didn't show you everything that happened, okay? And they didn't cover it play by play. And what they showed the American people exactly what they wanted to show them, and it was all the bad stuff, like, oh, look what this guy's bad, this guy's bad.
Now the guy's being brought up on murder charges. When 2 cops were beat up, he stole the taser. He'd already shot one taser, and he was shooting another one at him. What is he supposed to do? Just let him go, I guess. Just let him go.
I'm not gonna let you burn my house down, and I know you ain't gonna let me burn your house down. I'm not letting anybody throw a brick through the window.
Yeah, you got
the next thing coming out of that's going to be ammunition coming your way.
Your family, your house, and your family. Nobody has the right to come and threaten your family and your place where you live. Nobody has that right. Where in this country is it even an option to be talked about? When did this happen? So people, you've got to make sure you know who you're voting for. You cannot look the other way and say, well, I just don't like this guy because he says these things and this, that, and the other thing. These guys, they make me feel a lot more safe. And I just feel that they care more about what we're doing. No. You've got to take your vote seriously, because these people are going to destroy your way of life. They're going to destroy everything about America. They're going to destroy it all.
Hey, Matt, check this out. Rob was the one that asked about the people in St. Louis, but he just sent me this thing too on this other media here. It says 4th of July flag burning to peacefully protest the abolishing police nationwide. Free entry, Gettysburg Cemetery, children welcome.
Great.
Antifa face painting.
And notice here's the code word: peaceful protesting. Notice how the media uses this, and the Democrats are going to use this. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for this nonsense on this Russian story either. This bogus deep state. Of course, Russians were trying to kill us. Russians were burning holes through Americans' backs in Vietnam. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Russians were also getting skinned alive by the Mujahideen when they shot them down in Afghanistan. What the hell do these people think? I mean, give me a freaking break. So now a deep state, it wasn't corroborated, and they're going to try to club Trump over the head, saying Trump's been sidling up to Putin when he's been harder on Putin than any president we've had in recent history. Do not be fooled by these morons that are trying to create their own narrative out there. Follow these people back. Be very, very vigilant about what these people and the media, including Fox News, is telling you. Fox News Radio is a disaster, by the way. It's an absolute disaster. So anyways, we want to end on a high note here after a night of negativity. We got the 4th of July coming up. Don't let these people ruin your celebration of the greatest country in the world. Don't let these people make you feel like a second-class citizen in your own country. This is the greatest country in the world for everybody, whatever race you are, whatever religion you are, whatever thoughts you might have, right? This is the greatest country, has more freedoms and liberties still, even though we're losing them every day. It is the best place in the world to be. Be proud to be an American. Don't let them take this away from you. Absolutely. Be proud, celebrate, Have a safe 4th of July, and we will see you next time on the SCIF. Remember, visit our website, www.Penergic.life. Live in freedom every day.
Awesome. Our classes are filling up, people. Get in there. Let's get it done.
Let's get it
Later.
done.
Yep.